Did you know every major branch of science was founded by a creationist?
Prior to modern ideas like cosmic expansion and evolution, people still wanted explanations. I mean, come on, they're only human. But, of course, seeing none, they attributed phenomena and explained them through religion, using the typical God of the gaps reasoning. Secondly, it really helps your studies if you're not being burned as a heretic. Just saying.
Joining me to talk about this are two guys from our creation research team at Creation Science Evangelism, Jonathan Sampson and Joshua Jocelyn.
Oh, what a great idea! Let's interview our own people who are on our research team to present an unbiased view and give us all the facts we need, who themselves need not have any actual scientific background.
We have Johann Kepler, for instance. Ever heard of him?
Yes.
This is the founder of modern astronomy. He discovered the laws of planetary motion. This is a very prominent scientist here who helped found astronomy. But he also believed that God created the world about 7,000 years ago.
Too bad astronomy and radiometric dating don't overlap. That's like saying this very prominent animal behaviorist is a creationist, so creationism has to have some merit to it. How about this? Go out and find a geologist, an actual geologist with scientific credibility, who is also a young Earth creationist.
I mean, can you think of any major contributions from the evolution theory, from evolutionary scientists?
Well, other than the fact that this gives away the fact that this interview is just a setup to make evolution look stupid, the guy's looking at the blank side of his notes for crying out loud. Now, there's two ways that people can claim that evolution makes no contributions. That is, understanding the mechanism and understanding the current model of evolution. So let's go for the mechanism first. The mechanism of natural selection is critical to understanding the problem of bacterial resistance and antibiotic resistance, tuberculosis strains, for example. It's also key in understanding what we need to research in order to block the genetic mechanisms of adaptation of these bacteria. We can also use the mechanism of natural selection in medical fields and, increasingly more often, in computer science and engineering fields to determine the best way to do something, to design something, the best structure to make. Now let's move on to the uses of the actual model of how life became so diverse by this mechanism. Now, I was not able to find that much among all the garbage you find on Google. I was, however, able to find that understanding the changes that have occurred during an organism's evolution can reveal the genes needed to construct parts of the body, genes which may be involved in human genetic disorders. In other words, it helps to know what DNA we have, even if we haven't sequenced the entire genome, even if we don't know what every bit of DNA, what every gene does. It still helps to know that birds, for example, came from reptilian ancestors, and if you are keeping up with the news, you'll know that a group of scientists is working to create a chickenosaur by reactivating genes in the chicken, in a modern chicken, that code for reptilian features that have since been turned off since the split from reptiles. And even if this idea has no practical applications whatsoever, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily false. And secondly, I'd like to ask Eric if he has any practical applications of creation science. What does the knowledge that everything just popped into existence 6,000 years ago and hasn't changed since do for us? It certainly doesn't explain the vestigial structures we see in organisms. Certainly doesn't explain how it's even feasible to make a chickenosaur. What possible use to us could such an asynchronous idea, one that doesn't fit with reality, be?
Antibiotic resistance.
Oh, nah, God did that.
You see, this is why creationists are blamed for being unscientific. Well, I don't know. God did it. Magic Man done it. I don't know how this works, therefore God did it. First of all, any inbuilt resistance would mean that no bacteria would be killed at all when exposed to the antibiotics. Only a small portion of the population has resistance, if any exists at all, which is exactly what we would expect from the evolutionary model, from the evolutionary mechanism. Secondly, if the genes had been there since the organism had been created, they would have already mutated to the point of being useless, even if they were only 6,000 years old. This would still be plenty of time for mutations and variation to act on these genes that aren't being expressed, and because they're not being expressed, natural selection cannot weed out these bad mutations that destroy the gene. Noah Plum 99 even made a video addressing this very point, the relevant clip of which I will play for you now.
Shows that nearly 4 billion years ago, the designer made the first cell, already containing all the irreducibly complex biochemical systems discussed here and many others. One can postulate that the design for systems that were to be used later, such as blood clotting, were present but not turned on. In present-day organisms, plenty of genes are turned off for a while, sometimes for generations, to be turned on at a later time. Well, despite the fact that Michael Behe is talking utter fucking bullshit, because we know that if a gene is turned off for any length of time, that it starts to mutate, and natural selection cannot remove those mutations. That's why cavefish have all these distorted eyes that they have. That's why you and me have genes with pseudo genes, fossilized genes, olfactory genes for smells that we can no longer smell anymore.
The Bible is very pro-science. It promotes scientific research. It says, "Speak to the earth, and it shall teach thee. The fish of the sea shall declare unto thee."
Just to give you some context, this is Job speaking to his accusers, and it reads, "And those who provoke God are secure, whom God brings into their power. But now ask the beasts, and let them teach you, and the birds of the heavens, and let them tell you. Or speak to the earth, and let it teach you, and let the fish of the sea declare to you. Who among all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this, in whose hand is the life of every living thing, and the breath of all mankind?" Well, to be frank, it seems that nature has made a liar out of Job at the request of the Bible. Radiometric dating of the earth, studying the genes of the beast, looking at the homology we have with fish. If the Bible does promote scientific studies, it tragically destroys its credibility in the process. To reiterate, the issue here is not that theistic scientists aren't scientific about their particular fields, unless of course they're Michael Behe, but rather that theists are unscientific about the science that they claim proves their beliefs. Let's take Mr. Hovind, for example, in one of his Creation Minute videos.
Now, when a clam dies, it relaxes and opens up. These are found in the closed position, 450 miles from the beach, and 5.5 miles above sea level. So was there really a worldwide flood? The evidence says yes.
And I assume that this is supposed to mean that the clams were overcome so quickly by the sediment brought on by the flood that they were buried before they could die, and when they died, they had no room to open up, and thus they fossilized in the closed position. This is where you get creationist pseudoscience. Now, to understand why this is pseudoscience, let's take a look at exactly why clams open up and about the life of a clam. Clams open up when they die because of the spring-loaded hinge that holds the two halves of the shell together. When its two adductor muscles die, they provide no resistance to the spring, and the shell naturally opens up because of this spring that is the hinge that holds the shells together. Furthermore, during their lifetimes, clams bury themselves in the sand, in the mud, for protection. This means that when they die, they have no room to open up, not because they were overcome quickly by sediment from a giant flood, but because they were already buried when they were alive. It's not like this hasn't been known for 39 years now. Furthermore, their displacement from the sea is the result of the formation of the mountains after the clams died in what was once a seabed. A simple lookup of the theory of plate tectonics will tell you all of this. This is simple research that anyone can do, that creation scientists refuse to do, and this is why creationists are unscientific.
So was there really a worldwide flood? The evidence says
You fail.